No nonsense. Good morning and welcome to another show of No Nonsense Psychiatry. With the previous shows, we did an introduction what the show was all about, and it was about offering you and empowering you with tools that you can use on a day-to-day basis with your mental health problems or things that are affecting your mental health, your real situations that are quite stressful or anxiety provoking or making you feel low in your mood or whatever it might be. Tools that you can use in certain situations, and hopefully there'll be practical things that kind of make sense to you. I think you need to try and keep an open mind about these tools and try and just go with the flow. It's hard work. Then the next episode was, trying to support yourself or with the support of others. We looked at the pros and cons of traditional psychiatry. We looked at what was a severe mental health condition, which I think is a really good episode to listen to so that you fully understand that. And then also is to listen to episode 5 as well about the potential downfalls of having a mental health background. Or disadvantages, I would say. And then we looked at medication not being the only answer to things. So we've finally arrived at some tools that you can adapt to use in situations where things are overwhelming or feel overwhelming at the time. And then they may be added to other things that sort of go along, so stuff that's impacting on you or how you're feeling about things in general. And I think it's important to, if you have medication for such times, then great, you want to use it. But there's some people that don't want to use medications or can't use medications. And there are other things that they can do, which are not any better and definitely not any worse. But they are things that you can do without the need to feel you need to take a medication. So the first thing that I wanted to look at is public humiliation. And I guess we kind of can experience this on different levels. Public humiliation sort of comes from lots of different things, really. I mean, we've got so many avenues to receive public humiliation. We have social media where we could have an opinion about something and put it on and end up getting negative responses from that, which can sometimes impact on how you feel about yourself, especially if you feel humiliated and you go into a workplace and other people know your Facebook page or share your Facebook page and they can see that people have been having a go. And again, your interpretation is that your colleagues may start to feel that way about you when they may possibly don't. And then you've got other ways of being public humiliated. You might have family that have been seen in the street to be intoxicated or even drug affected, and you might feel bad about that. You might have a child at school that's can be a little bit unruly at times and misunderstood, and or even just naughty at times, because children can be naughty, regardless of what anybody else will say. That could negatively impact you. And you could have anything really. Your dog could get out, or you might have a family member that's maybe got forensic history, been to prison, whatever it might be. And dealing with public humiliation is incredibly painful experience, and it can lead to feelings of shame, isolation. Or in some cases a profound sense of injustice. The thing you don't think that you deserve it, or maybe you've been misunderstood. There are exercises designed to help you in this process, I guess, of emotional fallout. And what they try to do is regain some sort of sense of self-worth. And not only that, which I think is the most important thing, is building resilience in the face of judgment. Okay. Sometimes when we feel very passionate about things, we might be heading in a certain direction, and we have opinions about life, and we have opinions about how things go. It doesn't mean that our opinions are correct. It's our opinions. And public humiliation is something, I guess, I feel I see on a massive scale. And even from doing this show, there'll be people that will know me that will may feel negatively inclined to say something nasty about the show, or say something nasty about me, or pick on my voice, or whatever it might be, or said I'm talking a load of old nonsense. And at the end of the day, that's their opinion. My wife says to me that what other people think about you is none of your business. And when people tell you that someone said something about you, it's really a case of what's their motivation for telling you. That's what I would think. I don't think it's true what philosophy sort of implies. Is it true? Is it kind? Is it useful? If it's none of those things, why are we talking about it? But anyway, look, regardless of the point, we can all feel humiliated at times. And I guess if this happens on a regular basis and we start to, what I was talking about before, thinking and feeling in a certain way, we might start behaving in a certain way. We might become more isolative, or shut ourselves away at work, or become uncooperative, or end up maybe even losing their jobs, being sick, whatever it might be. It can all stem from feeling humiliated about stuff. So I think at the end of the day, you've got to ask yourself about these tools, and I will mention this every time I talk about a tool. I think at the end of the day, you've got to really decide, and I think I've mentioned this before, is what hard are you going to choose as a person? Because dealing with public humiliation and just allowing it to go on in your mind is going to be difficult. It already is difficult for some of you. And the time spent on it, conversations in the car by yourself, at home, thinking about things, sleepless nights, all these sorts of stuff, where you can't get something out of your mind, is hard. Yeah, it's hard, and it can go on for a long time. Some people never let things go, eh? There's certain things I think about with certain people or certain situations I've had, and I'm 57 years old and I still think about them today. So everybody is guilty of this. Don't be fooled into thinking that there's some people that just don't. They're so outgoing and extrovert that they don't get affected. Believe me, they do. It's just it's difficult and it's hard. Okay, so giving yourself over to that amount of time is hard. Doing these tools is hard. It takes effort, and I think that's why sometimes people think that a tablet's going to replace that. Well, a tablet might make you feel less anxious. It might make you feel tired. It might make you feel a bit more clear in your thought, which is all helpful stuff. But the humiliation's still there, right? So, you need to think about that, right? Just think about it for a second, right? Your tablet you're taking is good in the sense of you don't feel so stressed out about it. At night time, you feel like you can sleep a bit better. And then when you do think about it, you think about it a bit more clearly. Okay, so I guess you're kind of relaxed in a physical sense. But you still feel and you still think about the humiliation, right? So nothing's changed really, apart from how you feel about it. Well, you can do the same thing by doing these exercises, and more long term. And not only that, you can apply these methods in future situations for many things, but I think for the sake of public humiliation, if that's what we want to call it, public humiliation, being spoke about in public, or just feeling a bit targeted by people, you need to kind of feel that you can cope with these things on the day, and it's not going to be something that's going to be impacting on your life so negatively that it affects other things that you do. Okay, so let's have a look. There's two practices which I can show you today, and some of it requires a bit of thinking, and some of it requires a bit of imagination. So the first one we're going to talk about is the mindfulness or the mindful self-compassion practice. Mindful self-compassion. I think mindful self-compassion, we can have compassion for people that are in other countries and they're starving. Look what's happening in a lot of Middle East. In the Middle East at the moment, there's a lot of frustration in there, isn't there? And fact is that some people are starving, and this happens all over the world. People are starving. We can have compassion for that. We can donate money or our opinion or whatever. We can donate our time to it. So, but how often do you give yourself a bit of that compassion? You're a human being. Yeah, you are a human being that has constant thoughts and not always thinks very nice things. You make mistakes, you misinterpret. You've got five senses that are piling in information 24/7 into your brain, and you're trying to do this with millions of other people that are also doing the same thing, and we all have different opinions of things. So you've got to have compassion for yourself, and you've got to think to yourself, I am the most important person for me. Okay, why is that? Well, without you running at some sort of optimum level, you're not going to be able to look after yourself, let alone look after anybody else. And you might be a parent, you might be a partner, you might be an employee, you might be a volunteer. How are you going to function if you've got things going on in your mind that you're struggling to deal with and not dealing with it? Okay, so it's about having some compassion for yourself. So because feeling humiliated can trigger some harsh inner critic in you. Okay, your ego. Yeah, your ego will be affected by humiliation. It will trigger this person inside of you, or this thing inside you. Your some people call it their Project X. Dr. Stutz calls it that. Ego, your inner child, whatever it is that you want to call it. But the bit inside of you that isn't you, but definitely plays a big role in what's actually going on with you. Okay, so, and it will trigger this critic. So this exercise helps you counter that self-criticism, okay, by responding to what you're experiencing with some kindness and understanding rather than judgment. Okay, and again, this is your perception of how you see things. Okay, so when you see things as a negative, you're going to deal with it in a negative way. Okay, or you can see things as a negative and you can deal with it in a positive way. These are the choices that we have to make as human beings, and they're both hard. So you acknowledge the pain, right? And you start to, when you start to feel a bit shameful, yeah, acknowledge without trying to push it away, right? Place your hand on your heart and, or your cheek as like a physical gesture of kindness, and say to yourself, this is a moment of suffering. I know what you're thinking. Oh my word, what is he going on about? He's going to get me to preach to Jesus next. Well, whatever you want to do, but I just want you to acknowledge, and it's kind of like an anchor, it's a hook, and it's kind of reminding you mentally because you're saying it, and physically because you're touching yourself. And maybe if you did this in us, every time you feel bad, you wouldn't even have to say it. You could just press your hand on your chest and your mind would start to think, this is a moment of suffering. Okay, and you have to recognize common humanity, yeah, and remind yourself that suffering and humiliation are all part of the human experience, right? You can't go through life thinking, how would you know if you've been humiliated if you never experienced anything good? How would you know if you've never experienced it? How would you know if you experienced anything any good if you've never been humiliated? You've got to think about that, right? How would you know? You have to experience both, right? So, and you say to yourself, right, you've got your hand on your heart, and you say to yourself, this is your moment of suffering. You acknowledge that humiliation is part of that, and and it's part of the human experience. And you say to yourself, suffering is a part of life, yeah. And other people have felt this way, right? It's not you are not the only person out of the billions that are on this planet that's ever suffered from humiliation. Okay, others have felt this way. You're not on your own. We can often feel like we're alone when we feel humiliated, like the whole world is, everybody's superimposed loud and everybody's looking at you. There are other people that have felt this way. Okay, so you're recognizing this as a common thing that happens in the human experience. And now you've got to say to yourself, may I be kind to myself in this moment, or may I be gentle with myself. Okay, may I be kind with myself, may I be gentle with myself. You're put in a completely different spin, and if you're not feeling it, or if you can accept what I'm saying to you at the moment and be open to it, what does that feel like? You've gone from this emotion of someone saying, oh, did you see what they did the other day? They were talking on the phone and they said it all wrong and it come out really stupid. They look such an idiot. Or, oh, in the meeting, my God, they said something and the boss just closed them down straight away. On social media, I said that I liked, what was, that we're supporting Palestine, and 10 people had angry faces, to, yes, I'm suffering. Yeah, this is a moment of suffering. Other people have felt this way. Yeah. And can I be gentle with myself? You're kind of toning it down, aren't you? And the reason why this works, right, is that this exercise was developed by a psychologist called Christine Neff, and it helps stop fighting against the feelings of shame, instead respond with them with kindness, and it kind of breaks the cycle of you feeling humiliated, right? Because you've rephrased and reframed everything. You're using different language, okay? You've taken it from a humiliating thing, which we all feel, right? And, we've all felt it. But we're turning it into a more gentle, impacting thing. It's a bit like, putting airbags on a car. Instead of slamming into the wall and going through the windshield, you slam into the wall, but the car takes the impact. So it's a lot slower. The airbag comes on, and you just left with a bruise rather than with your face through the windscreen. Okay, so that's the first one to use, right? Okay, so it's a very powerful way of doing things. Okay, and it's a very powerful tool for healing that cycle of self-criticism, because you're changing your language. The next one is the shield and story, and this exercise helps you create some sort of psychological boundary against public judgment. Yeah, reframing your personal story, if you like, so you're not defined as it's not defined as some sort of humiliating event. Yeah, so close your eyes for me for a second and imagine a strong protective shield around you, and this shield can be made of anything, right? Stone, light, impenetrable force field. It doesn't really matter. It's what you can imagine. I struggle to envision light around me, but sometimes I can envision colour around me or something like that. So you need to find something that your imagination kind of resonates with, and use that as your shield, if you like. And the purpose of that is to protect you from comments and opinions from others. Yeah. Remember that others' perceptions about them. Remember that the perceptions of others is really about them, right? It's not about you. It's about them. That's how they feel. So they project it onto you, right? So you don't want that. So you're going to have this little shield around you things are going to bounce off. Like, if you've ever watched Star Trek, you see like they put up the force field and the shield, or whatever, I can't remember they call it now, shields or something, and then someone fires at them and you see like the light hit the shield and it doesn't touch the ship. They still get a bit of rocking around, but they're not being destroyed, right? And that's what it is, the shield. Now focus on your inner circle, right? And your inner circle are people that are inside your shield, people that know you, your friends, your family, your dog, your children, people that know you, right? And you say, like, they're the people who truly love you and know you, right? They're your parents know you, your dog knows you for what you are, whatever it might be. Okay, whatever it is that's close to you, know that these are the people that really love you, and remember that they have demonstrated trust and support for you, and their opinion is the only opinion that matters. Okay, and then I want you to write down on one side of paper, your version of the event from your perspective. Yeah, write down about your intentions, your feelings, and the parts others don't know. And by doing this, you're taking back control of the story, your own story, or your own narrative, as what people will say. Okay. And when you practice this narrative, think about a new, empowering way to talk about the event. Instead of "I was humiliated in public," you can say something like, "I went for a really difficult time publicly, but it taught me a lot about resilience and who my true friends are." Do you see how that's reframed? It's gone from "I was humiliated in public" to "I actually went through this really difficult thing in public, but it really, at the end of it, I kind of feel like next time, if it ever happens again, I feel more resilient about it. I feel like I can take it." And the reason why this works is that it stops internalizing the public's judgment, by creating a clear boundary around you in the shield, focusing on your own story of the event, and it prevents you with defining your own self-worth. It doesn't mean that event is defining who you are. It's just an event. We all say things that perhaps other people find amusing. And there'll always be idiots out there as well, as I call them. The others. Whatever you want to call them. So look, I've gone on 22 minutes talking about one tool. Okay, this is one tool of hundreds that you can use. Okay, and I think this is a gentle way to move into things that happen every day, public humiliation, and it may not be total humiliation, but things that kind of niggle you. These are sort of things. So you're looking at the mindful compassion practice, and it's about looking at the fact that changing a narrative from being quite humiliating to this is a moment of suffering, and suffering is part of life, and I just want to be kind to myself at the moment. You're changing it, you're impacting, you're changing it. With the shield, you're developing a shield around you with an inner circle inside of all your supports that you have, the people that really know you and love you and you trust, and their opinion that you trust, and then whatever comes in just bounces off. And then you're creating this story of, no, this is what I meant, this is this is my intention, and then you're rephrasing that story, that narrative, so that you don't go into this motion of defining yourself by the event. What you're doing is that you've kept your inner core yourself, and the event is just something that happened, and the next time it happens, it will get easier. Okay, I'm not saying it'll be super easy. You're never ever going to get over this. You're always going to have different things that are going to go on, but these are the tools you can use. It starts off, this sounds like a really long process, but actually the first one, you could probably recreate in 15 seconds if you did it enough. 15 seconds of your life could change your whole day. 15 minutes of your life writing down your narrative could change your whole day. 15 minutes. 5 minutes. Maybe you will need to write it down eventually. Do you know what I mean? This is what you need to think about. So anyway, we're going to go into some more tools. This one was about public humiliation. I'll pick another subject next time. If you want to say to me, "Oh, what about this?" Send it in to me. Write me an email. Send me a message. Get other people to watch the show with you, listen to the show, shall I say, with you. I know it's only a blank screen. I wish I could work out how to do a podcast as just a podcast, but that's all I can do at the minute. I will work it out. And sometimes if you want, come on and talk about it. We can do like a live link through Zoom or Teams or whatever, and we can, talk about some issues and go through them, a bit at a time. And yes, it's going to feel like hard work, right? Yes, I totally agree with you. But yeah, again, like I said earlier in the show, what hard do you want, right? What hard are you going to choose? Because it's all hard. Okay. Thank you very much. Subscribe, share, and I'll see you next time, eh? Take it easy. No nonsense.